We're on. Welcome to the Charlie Paparelli Show. Today's topic is seeing and fixing a well-intentioned but broken system, an entrepreneur story. To be sure not to miss an episode, please subscribe at paparelli.com. Simply submit your email address. You'll receive my weekly interview as a bonus and my Tuesday morning blog for entrepreneurs. This show is focused on helping entrepreneurs build valuable businesses. To this end, I interview entrepreneurs who stand apart both in the for-profit world and the nonprofit world. Today's guest is Kurt Kandler. Kurt is the founder and executive director of 410 Bridge. For the last 16 years, he's been there. Kurt started 410 Bridge shortly after taking him and his family on a mission trip to Uganda. I believe it was as far back as 2006. He learned something on this trip with his family to Uganda's bush country. There are huge economic problems in these countries. And the do-gooders and other non-government organizations, as we'll refer to them as NGOs, are mostly not helping like they should. There has to be a solution here. Upon returning from this trip to Uganda, Kurt could not stop thinking of a better way for these people to leave poverty. Kurt is married to Erica for 33 years. They have they are members of North Point Community Church. They are, which is a church in Alpharetta, Georgia. They have 4 grown children and they have 2 grandchildren. So welcome, Kurt. I'm glad that you're joining me and you're here to help other entrepreneurs around the world. Thanks for being here.
Charlie, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, when we start here is, people don't know 410 Bridge, so maybe you can just do a short overview of 410 Bridge.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that intro, too. It's interesting to hear that from you.
Why, was I off a little bit?
Oh, you were dead on. It was perfect. Hey, so 410 Bridge gets its name from 1 Peter 4:10. That's the 410 part. 1 Peter 4:10 says that, we should all use the gifts that we've received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. We love that. That's our namesake scripture. And of course, the bridge is this bridge between kind of us and communities in need around the world. And essentially, we are a community development ministry. We adopt entire communities in the developing world, currently in 4 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Haiti, and Guatemala. And we walk with those communities over a very long period of time. We like to say that we're a mile deep and an inch wide. We walk with those communities for a long time with the indigenous leaders that live in that community. They lead the effort, and we're working these communities to a point where they ultimately graduate. They graduate from the 410 Bridge partnership. And what that means is that they've come to a place where they can continue their journey of development without us. And they're actually doing more in their community.
Have you done, how many of those do you have?
We'll graduate our 13th community this year.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. So I thought you were like the other NGOs. You're kind of in it and you're there forever. Okay. This is good to hear that you're actually doing graduation. So and I think this is going to come out in our discussion and I'm looking forward to it. So when did you start 410 Bridge? Bring me back to the beginnings there.
Yeah, September 2006. We had my family and I. The story there, it's in the book, but the story there is that a friend of ours, a family that their children went to the same school, small little Christian school here in Atlanta. That we actually started one of the first 12 families to start that. Did a little shoebox thing for a community, a ministry in Uganda. They went and delivered these boxes of school supplies and toys and things from the kids in our school. They came back, found them in our living room, having a dessert and coffee, looking at photos of their trip to in the middle of nowhere, Uganda. And this was a time in my life that what I kind of refer to as our dark times. This was a very difficult time in our lives. We'll probably talk about that. But anyway, my buddy Dave showed a photo of this school that was made out of mud and sticks and cow dung. And every time it rained, the walls would crumble. They'd have to repack the walls, dirt floor, no desk, kids sitting on rocks, no teachers, no supplies, all of that. And I was just puzzled by that. last thing on my mind was that at that time. But I was really.
Why were you puzzled by it?
Well, I mean, why not just build a brick building? I mean, I'm pretty easy. I can build things. Why not just go get some bricks and build a brick building? That's the classic kind of American perspective, right? I saw that as a problem to be solved. Just go solve that problem. And
well, wait a second. Were you the only one that actually saw this, or were there other parents that actually were exposed to this?
There were some other guests in our home that were celebrating their trip, and they were just sharing their trip with us. Yeah. And so,
so why were you like, oh, this is stupid, we should fix this? Why wasn't the other, 6 dads that were there, or the 6 moms are going like, oh man, I'm all in. This is what we need to do. We get to fix it.
I think they were kind of talking about their whole trip, their whole experience, cross culture. And I was kind of, what captured my heart was, that school building. It seemed silly to me. Like, again, I can build things. I'm kind of handy. It's just, why don't we just go fix that problem? And so anyway, I left that little dessert and coffee, and next morning I'm in my office and in my quiet time. And again, this was a very difficult time in our lives. It's what we call our dark times in our family. And, that's the time when you're leaning heavily into God.
What was that when you said it was dark times? What made them dark times?
Well, my business had failed. I was out of work. I was working out of my basement, trying to figure out how to make ends meet. Nothing was going well. It was my wilderness walk.
How did what happened with your, let's roll back just a little bit.
Okay.
What business were you in?
So I had a direct marketing agency in Atlanta. At our peak, we had probably 45 or so employees.
Did you start that too?
Mm-hmm. I did.
How long ago was that? What year was that you started that?
I'm sorry?
What year did you start that? Right out of college, or?
My youngest son was 18 months old, so like 93. And so we were kind of 10 years into that, 9 years into that. And 9/11 happened.
Was that right out of college that you started that?
Oh gosh, thank you. Oh my! If I could give you a hug, I would. No. I was in my early 30s at that point. But yeah, I just look younger than I am. But no, I was.
Are you from Atlanta?
Originally born and raised in Wisconsin, but Atlanta's been home for 40 plus years, since early.
Oh, so as you were an adult.
Yeah.
So you began your adulthood here, but all your childhood was back then. Was your dad a professional, or?
He was in the insurance business for a while. He was a sales rep for a while. We lived in Wisconsin in my younger days, and then we moved to Florida, and then they landed here in Atlanta. When I was in college, I went to USF, University of South Florida, for a couple of years, and then my entire family was here in Atlanta, so I moved back to Atlanta and finished school here. And just
was there a reason that you didn't finish in USF? I'm just curious.
Well, I just wanted to move back to family. So I just moved from USF to Georgia State, finished at Georgia State, got a business degree. And I've been
Were you a Christian back then too? I mean, was that something that was indigenous to your family?
I think so. But I would say that we were nominally Christian.
Oh, okay.
School, my younger days, as a kid, I went to a small little Christian school in Wisconsin through grade school. And then, so I knew all the Bible stories. I was in chapel every week, that type of thing. But I don't think that, and while I believe I was a believer, really that walk was with Erica in our early years of our marriage. It's not until those dark times hit.
It sounds like with your parents, given the activities that you were involved in, to say it was nominal, I think a lot of people would say you were devoted, as a family. So there was a pretty strong foundation that was put in place for you.
There was. There was, but it wasn't strong enough for me not to leave my faith until my late 20s, early 30s. And the way that I say it is, during those dark times, I realized that my way was not working. And I literally got out of bed at 2:00 in the morning one night, kind of having this anxiety attack, out of work, no money, going into debt like crazy. I mean, I know
what was that? How old were you then?
Times than we had, but this was a really difficult time. And I realized that there was a difference between declaring Jesus Lord and allowing him to Lord over my life. And I think when I crossed that chasm of allowing him to Lord over my life, that's when I really said, my testimony is, I'm going to do the next right thing in times of confusion, chaos, whatever. I'm going to do the next right thing and trust him with the results. And when did
that happen? How old were you then? Huh?
What was 42 maybe? I don't know, something like that.
42.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it was.
And that would have been, what year was that? 42.
So this was 2000. No, so it was probably my early 40s, 43, 44, something like that. So it's 2005, 2004.
Oh, okay.
2003. I'm trying to years.
So by then you do have you are married, you do have kids,
mm-hmm.
and you have a business that you say is failing, and you just got to the, in effect, end of your rope. I mean, I know that's your story and my story sound a lot alike. All right. You know, it's sort of like things seem to be going okay, and then they weren't going okay, and they didn't look like they were going to go okay, right? You know, so you suddenly say, I'm losing hope here. You know, like, what's the deal? But I do have, I look around and I got a house, kids, cars, wife, you know, what's going on, right?
Right. What's going on? And what was going on was my way was not working. And, you know, again, allowing him to, the difference between declaring him Lord and allowing him to Lord over your life is a big leap. And, but when I did that, it changed. Did somebody
make you aware of that back then?
Yeah, I have a buddy.
This delineation.
Yeah, he said I was at church one Sunday. It's tough times. I'm parking cars. I'm volunteering in the church. I'm doing life, right? And my buddy Kent said that to me, and I'm not even sure in what context.
Okay.
It kind of threw me back and thought, am I doing that? And I clearly was not. I'm trying to control it.
What did he say to you? Just to repeat it one more time.
There's a difference between declaring Jesus Lord and allowing him to Lord over your life.
Huh.
Yeah. So it just threw me back in my chair.
So tell me that moment when you were there now, that 2004, 2005, that moment when it was like, okay, I'm stepping over the line.
Yeah. I mean, I was laying in bed and having this anxiety attack around, I have no idea what to do next. I have no idea. Everything I've tried, and I'm a doer. I'm a type A. I'm a driver. I've always been very entrepreneurial. I mean, there's a problem. I'm going to go fix the problem. Heads down. I work hard, all of that, and nothing was working. It was a wilderness walk.
When you say you had an anxiety attack, and I appreciate you sharing that, I think that's something that we skip over. I mean, that shows the depth of it.
Yeah. And so I got out of bed and I literally got on my knees and I said, you promised the peace that transcends all understanding. I need some of that. And I need a lot of that. And so you can have it. You can have all of it. Because clearly my way is not working, and just give me the next right thing to go do, and I'll go do that, and I'll trust you with the results. Just be clear, please. Just be clear. Don't leave it up to me. Just make it clear that this is the next right thing that you want me to go do, and I'll go do that. And so, be careful what you pray for.
I love that. Just be clear, because what struck me then is, it's like, God, I believe that clarity of communication is important to me, and it was something that I always stand by. Mm-hmm. I want you, since you made me clear, you be clear.
I need to not make sure it's not a Kurt idea.
Right. A Kurt idea?
Oh, a Kurt idea.
Oh, a Kurt idea. Okay.
Yeah, I want it to be his idea, and I'll go do that. And that served me. That served my family, my wife, my marriage, my career, 410 Bridge. It served us really well. Did you get to a point, though, Kurt, where you said when you were in this desert walk, like right after that, did some answer come? Peace came almost immediately. I woke up the next morning.
Peace came upon you.
Yeah. I woke up the next morning and I'm like, this is weird.
But you still don't have a business, or the business is still troubled. You still have a wife and kids. You still have all these responsibilities.
I still have a dumpster fire of debt and
okay.
How to make a living and all of that still swirling around, but there was a confidence, a peace. And again, when he says it transcends all understanding, it transcends my understanding. I'm just a guy trying to.
Where did you go with it? This new peaceful Kurt. Where does this new peaceful Kurt go?
I got up, went back to work. It did not much changed on your day-to-day basis, but then shortly after that, my buddy Dave and his family came over to tell us about their trip to Uganda.
That's what it's on. Okay.
So that next morning, in my quiet time.
That's helpful because what we've talked about puts the rest of this in perspective, you see.
Yeah, I understand. So, that next morning after that dessert and coffee and seeing those photos of that school building, I was praying, and God loves it when we negotiate with him.
Never did that before. So tell me how you did it, okay?
I said, listen, I tell you what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to, as soon as I get my career back on track, start making some money again, get my kids back in private school, get this debt paid off. As soon as I right this dumpster fire of a ship that is currently my life, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to build those kids a brick building. And I immediately, the heavens didn't open and voices and trumpets. And no, it was a clear, undeniable conviction that I had it backward, that I should go serve him and his kingdom first. And the rest of this stuff, he'll walk with me through that. Much of it is to my own making, but he'll walk with me through that. But I should serve him and his kingdom first. And the rest will not necessarily take care of itself, but the rest is secondary. And so that was an immediate conviction, one of those defining moments that I talk about in my book where.
So what was this? Is this where God actually said, after you did the negotiation and tried to cut the deal, you heard that, oh, come on. You know who God is?
I heard you got it backward, pal.
That's what. Oh, he ended it with pal.
I think so. I don't know if that's true, but that's a poetic license. But yeah. No, you got it backward. You got it backward. And I knew I had it backward, and I was convicted that I had it backward. There was no denying that I had it backward.
But then it almost lays it all back on you. It seems like, aren't you going to drag me out of this thing?
But see, that's the beauty for me. That's the beauty, again, just for me, of my walk, where in times of confusion, times of chaos, times of conflict, whatever it might be, just do the next right thing. I had no idea how to go do the next right thing. But what's the next right thing to go? If he's laying on my heart that I should go build a brick building in the middle of nowhere, Uganda, for these kids, which sounds really weird, even when I say it out loud, just take the next right step, which was, well, I got to go have a conversation with Erica about this.
Yeah.
Which is a fascinating conversation. She's going to listen to this and she goes, yeah, I'm going to remember that conversation. Hey, honey, I was in my prayer time this morning.
Well, tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, it was a very difficult time for her.
What'd you say? Well, yeah. So you're in this difficult time economically, right? Like you say, it's a dumpster fire for the family, in effect, you and the family. Mm-hmm. Tell me how you approached her on this. Tell me what that conversation kind of.
Well, we've been
details of it a bit, if you could.
We've been talking for a few minutes, and so you can already know that I'm a very direct guy. I don't have a lot of words to share. I say God's gifted me with a limited vocabulary, and so I told her what happened, and that I feel like I'm supposed to go do that. I think I'm supposed to go help those kids build a brick building for their school. And, she processed that over I don't know, hours, days, whatever, because it wouldn't go away. This isn't you have this defining moment in your office, you run upstairs, grab a cup of coffee and tell your wife, hey, this is what we're going to go do. No, it wasn't that. It was a process. And, I got to tell you.
When you first told her, what was the reaction?
I'm married to a woman who at that time was in her own faith walk, her own challenging time, and she has her own testimony and her own story through all of that.
It's very interesting. One of the things that we always talk about, if we let me interrupt you, because I see this now with my kids who are now turning 40, and haven't been through this. We often think of this midlife crisis as only for men.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Well, I think
it's like you said, you're talking about Erica. She was going through kind of a lot of the same thing here.
Yeah, I don't know if it was midlife crisis, but it was a crisis of faith. It was not a crisis of faith. It was she's amazing. She's like, what are you teaching me here? And she would, in prayer, in the Word, she listened to a lot of tapes at the time, videos at the time. A lot of things were influencing her, and she was on her walk trying to figure out, what are you trying to teach me? Because we made a commitment very early on when we kind of, I would say, made this conscious decision to put God first in our marriage. It's the old triangle, right? The old pyramid. God's on top, we're over here, we're going to put him in the center. And I would think her testimony was her walk of understanding that I wasn't responsible for her happiness. She would look to me for those kind of things. And we look to God for that fulfillment. We look for that God to be front and center in our marriage and our family.
How long ago was that? I mean, well, how many years were you married at that time, say?
First 3 or 4 years.
Oh, early. Okay.
Early on.
Okay.
So she said, when it came to the school, I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to go do, but I'm supposed to go do that. I don't know how to go do that. She says, well, start raising a little bit of money. How much does it cost to build a big, really, I don't know. And we started it's just doing the next right thing.
You had to raise the money also for the airfare and hotels or whatever the heck else in other words, your personal expenses to get over there.
We did. And we had a bunch of frequent flyer miles at the time. Because I was coming out of my business, so I had a lot of those. But we had to raise that, and we had to raise money for the school and a water well and books and for the school. And so God was very faithful through that. But it took a long time to raise it. It took close to 18 months for us to raise $10,000 just for the school.
No kidding.
Yeah, I should have prayed for more wealthy friends.
What was your pitch? Because you're this direct marketing guy, right?
Yeah. Just the truth. Just the reality of it. I think I need to go do this. Here's the need. And it was very needs focused. Here's the need. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. I feel like I'm supposed to go do that. Can you help? And
did you ask people for a certain amount of money when you did the ask, or did you just say anything would work and you wound up with $50 donations?
I was completely out of my depth there. I had never done this before. I had never asked people for money. So, we had little events. Some people kind of had, money kind of trickled in when they saw my heart, but it took a long time. And one of the stories that you'll find interesting here is, I put it in the book, but we had a little dinner at our house at the time. So I had to go get a job. And let's not forget that, I don't feel like I make a very good employee. That's why I've always wanted to be kind of entrepreneurial in my life. So I had to go get a job at this point. And one of the ladies that worked for me at the time, her husband was a chef. And she says, Kurt, and she was a believer. She says, Kurt, I'll talk to my husband. He'll come and cook a really nice meal. You buy the stuff. He'll cook a really nice meal and you can invite people and you can do a little fundraiser in your home. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. So we did that. Huh. And he came in and did a great meal. A bunch of friends came over, 20 or 30 friends came over in our home. And we had this meal and, people stayed really late. These are friends of ours. And so I remember it was a Saturday night and one of the families didn't leave until like 1 in the morning, something like that.
Wow.
And so, got up the next morning and I woke up and we were late for church and everybody's sound asleep. The kids are asleep. Erica's exhausted. So I just let them sleep. And I went downstairs and I was just curious. Well, I wonder how much we raised. And so, I'm an accountant by education, finance guy. And so I'm a spreadsheet guy. And so I had 2 spreadsheets. One was of every person that had donated anything to this adventure that we were in, because I wanted to thank them personally after we had completed it. And so I went and looked at all the checks that we had gotten the night before and added them to the spreadsheet and I added them all up. And it came out to like $27,183 or something like that.
From that one dinner?
Well, over the course of time, over the last 8 months, which was way more than we had originally targeted. So now we could do a water project. Now we could do some textbooks. We could do all these things. But I had another spreadsheet of all the costs that we were going to need for a variety of things to go do this project. And it was all in Ugandan shillings. So I had to go look for an exchange rate for Ugandan shillings. So I was adding it up. And there was an exchange rate at the time, that's 8 decimals, right? And so I popped that in there, and it came out to $27,183.35. It was literally 35 cents difference than what I needed versus what we had received. And so I did what any good Christian will do, as I went and I reran the numbers. And when I realized that it was exactly the same, I went upstairs and woke up Erica up, and I said, "Honey, you gotta see this, because this is just affirmation that we are doing the next right thing. We're on this path, and we're just going to continue on this path and trust him with the results. And so that's one of those God stories along the way that is, hard for some people to believe, but it's not coincidence. It just isn't.
And it's funny. We've all heard stories like that. It was just the right amount. That's just incredible. When you invited these people, and this is just a learning, when you invited those 30 some odd friends, to this dinner, did that include non-Christians as well as Christians?
Oh, yeah.
Or were they all, it did.
Oh yeah.
Did everybody participate pretty much?
Yeah, everybody did.
So it wasn't a Christian meeting.
No.
This really was. We're focused on helping build this school and help develop this community.
In my younger day, I was a pretty good tennis player, so I was in a tennis league and doubles leagues and all that. And so these are just our neighborhood friends, our tennis friends.
Oh, that's great.
School. We just gathered as many people as wanted to come and hear what we were trying to go do. And
So now you got this $27,000, or what would be close to $1 billion Uganda shillings. Okay, so whatever the number is what was the next step then?
Well, I decided that I was done raising money and I'm just going to go do it. We needed to build this building. I said I promised that I would go build the building, and so we set out to do that. And so that was we had that dinner in September. And we put dates on the books to go between the Christmas New Year break, and started making the plans to go do all that. And we, got the airfares, and we had to figure out with the ministry on the ground that we were helping, they could help us with hotels and all of that. And we just put all the things in place to go. And the day after Christmas in 2000, and I guess that was 5, through my 3 kids at the time, and Eric and I in a plane. My buddy Dave, who went on that first trip, he went with us, and we traveled to Uganda. And our family thinks we're crazy. Our generation, Charlie. What do you think about when you think about Uganda? You think about Idi Amin.
Absolutely, yeah.
And people listening, young people.
You think about the Israelis, surrounding the plane, right, at Entebbe Airport.
And back then, that's what we thought about. That's still what our generation kind of thinks about. Anyway, so we went and got on the ground. And after a few days of building this building, making really every mistake.
And is this where your book actually starts?
Yeah, pretty much.
This is where you kind of enter, and I love it where you're staying. There's all these bugs flying around. We're in Entebbe Airport. There's guys with AK-47s around us. And I'm here with my wife and kids, and I'm like, what did I just do? Okay, I just love that.
What have I done? So
I've had that exact same feeling when I flew into that exact same airport, okay?
Yeah. And my kids were 10 or whatever they were.
Yeah.
So what have I done? And was what I was thinking. And but the people were wonderful. And, we arrived in the community, and they had already laid the foundation for the building. We'd seen that. We're just trying to get acclimated. But really the point is that after just a few days, I was sitting with Erica at night. The kids had gone to sleep. And I said, what we're doing here is of no moment. This doesn't even matter. This is a small drop in a really big bucket. My first experience with extreme poverty environments. And I was really frustrated. I was disappointed. I thought we were going over there to make a difference for generations with a permanent school building and a water project. And the problems were massive. And I had all these questions. And so, again, when you have that, you just do the next right thing, which is to finish.
But here's something that's different. I mean, you did something like what you call the next right thing, and what most of us, including me in many cases, was the next right thing is. And when I see that this is the effort that I'm putting out and the time I'm putting in and the money that I'm putting towards this cause is literally, you call that a drop in a bucket. It's almost, to me, it became a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I mean, this is so big and such a big issue. This poverty is so pervasive. There's, we have cultural issues. You got the poverty and economic issues. You got education issues. You got, because we're smart enough. We're business people. We think about all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and I'm laying a brick or I'm teaching these people how to become entrepreneurs, and of the 500 I'm standing in front of, one of them's paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
what am I doing? Why don't I just go home and do what I do? My market, the people I serve, they're Americans. I don't know how to do this, but you didn't do that.
No, I didn't.
Why?
I think the way I'd answer that, Charlie, is I'm not fooling anybody by just going home and continuing to do what I was doing, because I was convinced that what I was supposed to do was that I was supposed to. I was where I was supposed to be, when I was supposed to be there. I had no answers to this problem, but I did have. I was compelled to ask the questions, and there was no turning back from it. I mean, what are you going to do, right? When you have
How did you know you were supposed to do this?
When you have a defining moment, Tell me
about that defining moment. I mean,
you're not fooling God in a defining moment. And you're only fooling yourself. It's between him and you. You know, and he knows the truth here. And that is that got this problem. I don't understand it, but I cannot get out from inside of me what's the word? I was compelled, conviction to continue to try to figure it out. And so when I came back.
Didn't you have those thoughts, though, that said, if I really start digging on this and trying to figure out this problem that's sort of like sitting in front of me, that's just, it's almost like it has its nails into you. It's gripped you, okay? It's not a problem you can shake off. It's a tar baby, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The rationale starts at that point, which is, yeah, but I got a wife and kids, and I live in Atlanta, and this would mean that I'm going to have to come over here a lot.
Right.
Because the problem, I can't solve it long distance. I got to actually get closer to it to understand it so that I can, in fact, solve it. Okay. And I can't do it alone. That means I'm going to need money, and I'm going to need people. I'm going to need cooperation from the people. I mean, your mind starts going. And that's where, again, it's your second shot to say, I can unconvict now.
Yeah.
You see, I mean, because I rolled it out, I can look ahead. I always say there's no such thing as a 40-year-old entrepreneur because he knows too much. He knows how hard this is, but here you are. So what happened?
I don't know. I think it's like anything else. I see, well, not like anything else, but even when I started some businesses in the past, I'm trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
I see a problem.
That's the beginning of entrepreneurship.
I want to create a business around that problem. If I see a need that I can solve, I want to go solve that. And it was similar here, except there is kind of this divine issue, and I can't run from that. Look, you said that you were going to do the next right thing and trust me with the results. If you don't,
comma, pal.
Yeah, pal. Right.
I love that.
If you don't, that's on you. And so, I mean, I think it's not like I sat here and was laboring over it a lot, because it was clear to me that this was something that had captured my heart. Now I got a job, and I got a family, and I got this dumpster fire that's still raging, and I got to go handle all of that. But this is the thing that is really driving me to stay engaged. And so, when I came back, I became a little bit of a student on this problem because I had had way more questions. But I would also say that I don't.
Let me ask you this though: what was one of the things that struck me in reading your book is, and I've been dying to ask you this question: when did you see what's happened is people have defined the problem. These NGOs or these missionary organizations that bring churches in with all their people and everything, just like you eventually saw that schoolhouse that was, falling apart, right? Mm-hmm. Those people, they've defined the problem, and their solution to it is to just go and help. And so build the schoolhouse or to do these things. That's the solution. You looked when you were over there and you said, I don't know that that's the problem, and I don't think this is the solution, even if it was the problem.
Well, I think what I said was
So when did you, my question in all that introduction is, when did you actually, or how did you get to defining the real problem?
Well, I think the questions I was asking over there, I thought were the right questions, and the world was asking the wrong questions. And the questions I was asking is why.
Give me the comparison between the world's questions, and then we'll get to your questions.
The world's,
I need to know where we're coming from so that I see what you saw. Okay.
The world's questions are what can I do to go solve that need? What can I go do to solve that problem? That's my question. I ask. What can I go do to solve that school building problem, or that water problem, or education problem, or whatever the problem is?
So you fell into that says, well, the school building's fallen down. I know how to build a building. I'll go over there and build a building.
There's a problem that I can go fix.
Good.
And I'm going to feel really good about myself to fix it. Don't get wrong. Right? We feel good about ourselves. Nothing wrong with that, but
that's right. You come back, you have a party, you show everybody what happened, the before and after.
I think the right question is what problem are we solving? I should have asked, what problem am I really looking to go solve? And I'm not looking today, as 410 Bridge has evolved, and we continue to probably get more wrong than we get right, but we're evolving and learning and changing, and we are not looking to solve a water problem, an education problem, an economic development problem, a health problem. We're trying to solve a poverty problem. And if you're like any business guy, if you're going to go solve a problem, you better define it well. Because if you don't define it right, you may be implementing a solution that's solving a completely different problem. So it came to me trying to understand what is the real definition of poverty. How do you define poverty? Mm-hmm. And if you ask anybody, average person out there, what is poverty? How would you define poverty? They would give a definition that's rooted in materiality, in finances, in money. And I just don't believe that that's true. I mean, there's lots of different kinds of, not lots, there's different kinds of poverty. There's spiritual poverty, and there's, physical, there's material poverty. There's, health poverty. There's relative poverty, all of that. But at the end of the day,
what you're saying here, though, is I didn't start with how do I see a need, so how can I help? You're saying here, you brought it up, 10,000 feet, 30,000 feet, saying this is a poverty issue. What is poverty first? And then how do I then address that if I want to solve it?
Exactly.
All right. So tell me, bring me along that path on how you proceeded with that.
Well, I mean, I think
this is the heart of 410 Bridge.
It is. It's absolutely is. I mean, I think that it's important for everyone to understand that, this has been a thought process has evolved over 16 years. And I'm just I'm a child in this space compared to people that have been studying it for years and years and years. But I'm a blue collar, get it done kind of guy. And I don't want to read or write a bunch of white papers on it. I want to go.
You're a pragmatist. There's no doubt about it.
So when I was over there the first time, the way I would say it, I think I said it in my head, and I was asking Erica these questions like, why do these people have the perspectives that they have? Why are the men sitting around doing nothing? Why are the women doing everything? Where's the community here in helping us build this building? I don't understand why. I don't understand, which is, a statement. But so.
Well, this was a big one for you because one of them was, and you show it early in the book, is you say, why am I working on laying all these bricks? And I have all these guys, these community guys, their community, right, they're sitting there watching me.
Right. So again, it comes back to asking the wrong questions and start asking the right questions. And I think that's a right question. But that's a question that I asked, which means that if I'm going to go make a difference, I've got to go solve that problem. How do I get the community to go solve their own problems as opposed to looking to outsiders to come in and solve them for them?
So the need, then, in that case, I would say the need's not the problem. The need isn't the school building needs to be built. Nope. The need is why are the men sitting on the wall and they're not doing anything?
Right.
Okay, so had the need being they need to be engaged. They need to care about their community more than I do.
And why don't they?
Yeah.
And why don't they?
And they're living in poverty. I mean, what's the thing? I mean, isn't it obvious? Shouldn't they just do something?
Well, that's where it gets really messy because culture matters. People matter. Communities are all different. Now
you're starting to get to me about how big this is and how many threads it has when you start pulling on it.
But it really only has one thread.
Okay.
This is an oversimplification, and there's going to be some missiologist experts that may listen to me one day and go, that guy's all full of hot air. But in Kurt's humble opinion, there is one thread. And that one thread is worldview. Worldview is the conversation we're having in our head, the story we're telling ourselves to be true, our perspectives, and we all have a worldview. You have one, I have one, and every one of our worldviews drive the choices that we make. And those choices are going to drive the actions we take or don't take. And what I've seen and learned over the last almost now 17 years is that worldview shift, the choices that people make, have more to do with whether or not a group of people will thrive or live in deprivation than anything else. And so that's the thread, that's the thing that we're trying to impact. And how you do that, super complicated. But at the end of the day, anything—
to change somebody's worldview.
I'm sorry?
To change someone's worldview in the midst of a community or even a nation that shares that worldview. Mm-hmm. That kind of puts it in perspective. I mean, I was there in Uganda, and I was in the minority on my worldview, and they were in the super majority.
Right.
So how do you approach this?
Well,
first of all, why did you get convicted that was it? That was the thread. That was the problem, this worldview. When I went all the way down to the very, very foundation of it all, that's what we got to change.
So it's the progression of that, Charlie, is that, over there, I was saying at the time, feels like a lifetime ago, why do they have this perspective that they have? Why do they think this is okay? Why aren't they doing more to solve their own problems? And it's in a classic kind of arrogant American way. An American tone, which I'm not proud of, but it is kind of our culture too, right? See a problem, solve a problem. And that evolved over time to reading and learning and listening to people who were able to describe that more accurately. And the book that really changed my view on it was a book by Darrell Miller called Discipling Nations. And I read Discipling Nations, and the words just jumped off the page to me. And I quote a lot of it in my book. Darrow endorsed my book. He's, anyway. So it was. What's
just the author's name again? Just to have it on. Darrow.
Darrow. Darrow.
Darrow
Miller.
Miller. Okay.
That book just was the Bible.
How did you get that book?
I don't even know who told me about it. I can't even remember. But I read
it is probably one of these. You were probably talking about what you're seeing and the difficulty, what you were wrestling with, and they said, "Oh, you should read Darrell Miller's book, right?"
Right, and it's 30 years old at this point. It's not a new book.
Okay.
I think the difference is, I think the distinctive here for me, for 410 Bridge, for a lot of other organizations trying to work in this space is that I feel like the complexity in what we do after you define the problem properly is in executing solutions and staying on track with discipline inside some strategic guardrails that keep you focused. Because in our space, it's highly emotional, especially when it comes to children. And there is this myth, I call it a myth, is that anything that we do for the poor must be a good thing. And I disagree with that. And so we're trying to put things in place that are highly disciplined, moving toward outcomes, not process. We're trying to achieve specific, measurable outcomes in the communities where we work. not measuring activity, but those outcomes. And those outcomes all have to be driving people toward a Christian biblical worldview that helps them understand that, one, God loves them. They were created in his image. They were created for a purpose. They're forgiven, and therefore they should be forgivers. And they have responsibilities. God calls us to have responsibilities, to be godly parents and godly spouses and godly school teachers, godly business owners, godly leaders, all of that. And when all of that happens in one place, they will do more to solve their extreme poverty problem without us than they will with us. And we can graduate them and move on, knowing that they are and have put things in place where their mindset has changed, their worldview has shifted, where they say, before 410 Bridge came in, we had a poverty of the mind. This is what they say to me. We had poverty of the mind. You taught us that God has given us everything that we need to change the quality of our lives. And we have to start with what we have. We have to stop looking to outsiders to solve our problems. We can solve our own problems here. And do they have the capacity to solve their own problems? They may, and they may not. And so our job is to help lift their capacity, to help them go further, faster, and help them shift their worldview from whatever it is today to a Christian biblical worldview. And when that happens, man, that's a beautiful thing. And that's what's happened in 13 communities so far, and on its way in many others. Now, it doesn't work everywhere, but it does work, and it's a beautiful thing when it does.
So it's the worldview. It became clear to you. I'm trying to kind of tell you back what I heard, I guess, is this worldview that you saw that they had was this worldview of scarcity. I'm born into a very awful situation, this poverty, if you will, and it's just where I am. If anybody comes in and they give me money or they help me out, great. But there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, I would say
on your side, you're saying if you only knew Jesus Christ, okay, the gospel of Jesus Christ, which would give you this direct line to understand God better and all the resources that are available. We have a God of tremendous capacity and resources. Your view of your life would completely change. And if it did, everything would change.
I might say it a little bit different.
Well, say it different for me.
In our communities where we work in the world, we're working in reached areas of the world. They have heard the gospel. They know Jesus. But like me, I think they have declared Jesus Lord, but they haven't allowed him to lord over their life. They're not looking to move to be more Christ-like in their everyday life and how they interact with their neighbors and how they interact with their spouses. And where does tradition and culture collide with God's word? I mean, we have the same issue over here. It's everywhere in the world, right? But tradition, culture, what we know or think to be true, what the world is telling us, collides with God's word. And so we always point to Romans 12:2. It's that, don't conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Well, that's a critically important scripture. And so what is the world telling you about marriage? What is your culture telling you about marriage? What is tradition telling you about marriage? And then what does God's word say about that? And that is very different for a Kenyan marriage, for example.
This is a great philosophical discussion. Okay. And I agree with you 100%. This whole concept of, it's not just seeing Jesus as Lord, but seeing him as truly Lord over your life. Okay. So if this is the great aha, and I love the name of Darrow Miller's book, Discipling Nations. Okay. Mm-hmm. Not helping the poor more effectively, not doing right. Discipling nations, which speaks directly to what you're saying here.
Exactly.
How do I go from this? And this has been an issue that I have trouble with, is how do I go from what I think is a philosophical or biblical truth to, in this particular situation, putting together a methodology that sort of accomplishes that.
Right.
So so help me out there.
Okay, so that's what I was saying.
What did you do? Tell me your story on that.
It's really hard to execute on that.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we do, though,
what it ends up being is, oh, you just need to know Jesus. And if you do know Jesus, you need to, come on, start following Jesus. Renew your mind so you have the mind of Christ. Oh, that helped.
Yeah.
I'm all over it, right?
I think that's a classic way of helping the poor. You just need to know Jesus. Kurt, they just need Jesus. No, they do. They absolutely do. But they're not bodies without souls, and they're not souls without bodies. They're both. So we can help them physically while we help them spiritually. And how do you actually go do that? And I'll give you examples of how we do that. There are two programs that we run in our economic development kind of area of our, because we're holistic development, right? So a big part of that is economic empowerment. We run two programs. One of those is called business startup training. It's entrepreneurship training. I love it. And what they do is they learn how to start or better their existing business. They're all entrepreneurs over there because, I'd say, they're all.
Because the poor, by and large, are entrepreneurs. They have to be.
They're self-employed. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Some have an entrepreneurial spirit more than others, but that's another topic for another time. But we have a curriculum that we train community members on. And it basically does the basic business training that we would almost think to be common sense. Hey, the money in your pocket is not yours. The money in your pocket is your business's. You can't steal from your business by spending that money. It's your business. You got to reinvest it in your business. You got to stop drinking or eating your profits if you're selling Coke or food or whatever. All these, what it means to write a basic business plan, finding out what the community needs. What do they value? What would they be willing to pay for that you could provide a service for? All of these things are in the basic how to start a micro enterprise, a small enterprise. All of that's really, really helpful. But if we were only to do that, we would fail. Because within that, we need to teach these entrepreneurs what God says about money, what God says about their relationships with their spouses. Are their spouses partners in this business? What's their relationship with their neighbors? If you want to have a successful business, you need customers, and your customers are your neighbors. And if everybody in your community hates you because you have broken relationships, you're not going to have a successful business. And God wants you, in his word, to repair broken relationships and be a godly citizen of your community. And we talk about generosity and all these biblical worldview kind of teachings that are relevant to business. And what happens, the beautiful thing that happens here that I think a lot of Western organizations miss is that while the church, the local church in that community or churches in that community are the hero of this development effort, a lot of the people that are learning this business training aren't going to church. So they're never able to hear God's truth. But when we bring God's truth into a program that's relevant to them, they're going to listen. And we have more people come to the Lord in our business startup training, our foundations for farming training, which is basically training, farming God's way, than we do in any other program. And then the local church becomes attractive. It's no longer the house of no. People see how God's word helps them in their daily life and how he has created them for a purpose. And there is a right and a wrong way to do life. And tradition and culture is telling them lies. The world is telling them lies of what to believe, like we have to wait for outsiders to come in and solve this problem for us. No, we can solve this problem on our own. We're capable. We're smart. We can persevere. We can be honest.
That is so true. I mean, this gets back to, just talking about the gospel to people. Is God makes sense when you apply his word to your life situation right now. And if it's, I don't have money or I don't have a job or I don't, or my marriage is off base or whatever, that application, learning what his word says about that application, that's where the rubber meets the road, if you will.
Sure. And when we do that in our communities, we're doing it for business startup training. We're doing it for farmers. God made the soil to work this way. You need to do things on time, at a standard, without waste, with joy. Where's your family in this effort? Are you being honest with your community when you're reselling things? Are you being generous? Are you giving back to the church? All of these biblical teachings as it relates to farming draw people to God's truth. They'll listen to it because it's helpful to them.
Help me with this, though. Help me with this. we skipped over something. You went right to an example, which was this business startup training that you were talking about. Is one of the issues that entrepreneurs have is they're very quick to do what, in your case, okay, would be these NGOs or other people that want to do good do. They identify what appears to be the problem, only to find out later that's not really the problem. Okay. So how did you talk about how once you've sort of discovered, which is this is a worldview is really the problem? Can you take me a little bit more slowly through how did you sort of develop, how did you come to the solution? Or how did you come to a clearer definition so that you can come to a better solution? You see, this is going to take a little bit of patience. You got to roll back to way when you started here.
Yeah, it really wasn't all that difficult because once we determined that worldview was the thread that we needed to pull, right? We needed to go down that path. It became really clear that in everything that we did, there needed to be a biblical worldview teaching in what we do. We're helping people physically. We're helping them build capacity physically, both with infrastructure, human capacity, training, all of that. But we didn't need to boil the ocean of God's word in everything. We needed to make God's word relevant to what they were learning so that they were drawn to it and it became attractive to them. To me, how do we help the local church become attractive? The local churches in Kenya, for example, there's probably, 5 to 10 churches in each one of our communities. One, how do we bring them together? How do we bring pastors who are competitive together? How do we talk to them about their culture, the realities of their community, and disseminate God's word relevant to whatever we're kind of working on, even if it's water or education or business or health? Everything that we do, if we're not helping people eternally and only helping them temporally, we're not accomplishing what God's mission is for us.
Yeah, but when you say helping them eternally, that gets back up. That jumps me back to 30,000 feet. Okay. Whereas you say, I like what you said, which is whatever we teach, whatever need we're addressing, if you will, major need, like you said, water, shelter, security, all those things, it starts by infusing God's word into that particular topic.
That's true, but not, and I want to be clear about this, but not using their need as a platform for the gospel, because the gospel is strong enough to stand on its own. So we're not, a lot of organizations.
What you're saying is this is what God says about this activity that we're in. Yeah, right.
It's God's truth about and how it relates to business or farming or whatever. We're not saying, hey, here we're going to go put water in, but we need to have you come hear about Jesus before we give you water. That's the gospel doesn't need their needs to be a platform. It can stand on its own. What we're doing is in everyday life, having relevant teaching of God's truth in the variety of programs that we run. In schools, for example, we do a thing called Discovery Kids. And Discovery Kids is essentially biblical virtues taught to the kids in school in a very interactive, fun way. And, we're teaching about perseverance and cooperation and trust and honesty and all these biblical virtues that what we find is as you do that, you know what, their parents are hearing the same virtues as it relates to business, right? You need to be trustworthy. You need to persevere through difficult times. You need to cooperate with your neighbors. Right? So when all of these biblical virtues, this biblical teaching, the worldview shift is communicated and through the local churches, through programs that we run in the same place, the community and the entire community has a higher likelihood of having an aha moment that said, you know what? We thought the wrong way before. They really truly say this to me. We thought,
how long?
And we don't.
How long does that take? That aha moment?
Years,
right? Okay. Let me go back to something. I want to switch us off. You're giving me examples.
Okay.
You have I learned from your book, you have a very well-defined methodology. Okay. On how you find a community, How do you qualify a community? How you help them how you find their leaders, how you help them do an assessment. Okay. So can you kind of bring us through, it was like when I was talking to my son, David, who was with you in Central America, he goes, his 6 seeds, that he applied, he said it was brilliant. And so, take us through some of this. I think it's not like, oh yeah, here's what we do at schools and here's what we do with the pastors. And I mean, you've tied this thing down, man. So why don't you kind of bring us through this methodology?
I think where we kind of immediately went to the one thing that we're trying to change, which is worldview, and fast forwarded through a bunch of methodology to get there.
Yeah.
Well, there are lots of books about how to engage the poor better. Where I feel like organizations are failing or have fallen short is they're not executing on those principles, and we want to execute well on those principles. So one of the principles, for example, it starts with being invited. We can't just show up in a community. Of course, we just showed up in a community in the early days but we had to find people who knew leaders in a community who would invite us in to have a conversation. Today, we are invited in many, many places that we don't have the capacity to help yet, but we get invited. And when you get invited, it changes the dynamic. It changes from a dynamic from, hey, this organization is here to do projects, to they are one of us. We're inviting them into our community. And so it takes a long time for us to, one, be invited. Once we're invited, that first meeting happens, and, no Americans should be in that meeting. This needs to be our Kenyan, Guatemalan staffs having these meetings with leaders.
So these are locals having these meetings.
100% local staff. I'm a firm believer of that. We don't need any expat Americans in our cultures where we work, because that would just upset the dynamic. We want Kenyans helping Kenyans, Guatemalans helping Guatemalans, and so forth. So we come in, we explain what it means to be a 410 Bridge community. We're not here to do anything for you, but we're here to do with you. And we have a pretty involved methodology around examples, object lessons of how we illustrate that. I illustrate it with a rope.
One of the things that's one of your principles that I thought was very, very clear is the definition of development.
Yeah.
Just hit on that principle, and then we're going to go back to.
Yeah. So we rise and fall in our definitions, right? And so how do you define development? If we're a development industry, what is development? We define development by that which people do for themselves. And so we don't measure our success by what we do. We measure our success by what they do on their own. They need to pull us.
That's a 180 different view than the way that mission trips are thought of.
I think everybody says that. I think they say the right things, but they don't. They really would rather come in and do what they want to do when they want to do it, because it's their money, their time. They should do it their way. And
we know best.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Right. So,
okay. So
that's development.
So you get invited in you got Guatemalans helping Guatemalans. You got Kenyans helping Kenyans. Okay. How does
initial meeting? And then we say, look, if this is of interest to you, we want you to formally invite us back. And this is what it means to have a covenant kind of relationship, partnership with 410 Bridge. Again, we lay out all these kind of guardrails of we're not going to do for you, we're going to do with you, which means as leaders in your community, you need to mobilize and unify your community around this development effort, the development being defined as what you do, not by what we do for you. And if you're interested in that, invite us back formally in writing. And some do, and not all do.
What are you expecting from that? Like if you told me that, I wouldn't know what that meant. Do I just write you a note that says, please come back?
Write us a letter that says, hey, we understand what you've laid out for us. We're excited to enter into a relationship with 410 Bridge. We want to formally invite you to begin that process with us. This development.
Help me with this then. When you go get invited, who's doing the inviting the first time? Who's inviting you into that community?
So the model works. The original vision was we wanted to go so deep in a place that we would move the needle in that place. And we would, no fooling, move the needle to such a degree that places around the place that we work took notice and invited us into their communities because of what they saw in their neighboring communities. And that's kind of what happened.
Who did the inviting? I mean, if I got a community, let's say I have a village, how many people in a village? Let's say there's 1,500 people or 2,000 people in a village. Huh? Who invites?
The leaders.
Every village has a leader.
Every every village has multiple leaders.
They have multiple leaders.
I don't mean an elected, not a politician.
Yeah.
I mean, who are the people that the people are following?
I see. Okay.
So people always ask me, well, how do you find leaders in the community? Well, it's not all that difficult. You just look at how they're organized. They have associations, they have co-ops, they have schools, they have churches. Who's leading those organizations, those associations?
It might not be working well, but it is doing something and working somewhat.
And who's following who?
Yeah.
Are you a leader if no one's following you? So people are following people in the communities, and we gather.
So that's who invites you.
Yep.
That's who you come and talk to.
Yep.
You don't talk to the whole 1,500 people. You talk to those 3 to 5 people or whatever it is.
Yeah. Usually.
Okay.
But yeah.
Then they come and they say, I get it. Development is up to us. They seem to have helped other people, other communities. They've seemed to have been transformed, in fact. What we would like that. So I write you a letter and say, I get it. We like you back. Come on, let's kind of get started here.
But
help me.
There's a nuanced difference to that too, is that there is a group of leaders historically, and there's a subset of communities where we've worked, where they'll say anything that they need to say to get us to come back and do projects. And that's why I can't show up. That's why our Kenyan staff, our Guatemalan staff, they can see through that veil of culture and understand most of the time whether or not leaders are sincere or not. But the other thing the nuance here that's really, really fascinating.
That is in and of itself a nuance. Okay. That's really good.
The other thing.
And that took you a while to figure that out because you didn't have locals at first. Okay. That were in those
nations. A lot of frogs to find a few princes for sure.
Right.
But the other thing is that they are so grateful in many cases to being asked. So when we walk into a community, Charlie, we're not saying, hey, we can look around and in 10 minutes figure out what the needs are. They're not all that different from community to community. But the conversation doesn't start there. The conversation starts with, hey, what do you love about your community? Why do you love living here? If I was going to move to your community, tell me why I should want to live here. And now they start talking about all the positive things. And we ask them, hey, what are the skills that your people do in your community really well? What do you do so well that you could teach others to go do it? What are the assets, the giftings, the things inside your community that other communities don't have that you have that are really beneficial to you? And then what are some assets that exist outside your community that you can access? They're not inside your community, they're outside your community that you can access that help your community. And when you do all of that, I'm taking hours of discussion and distilling it down to 30 seconds.
Yeah,
when you do that, you have an asset map. You understand what they love about their community, what they do really well, what giftings and skills and assets exist inside their community and just outside their community. And so when they come back to you with what their needs are, you can point back to all these positive things in their community.
That's the next step. It's interesting. You don't start with what does your community need?
Never.
You say first, why is your community great? And then what assets are in this community? Like, what can you do? What skills? Whatever.
So
and then you finally get to the next step, which is what are your needs?
And then you say, well, if
what do they think their needs are, right?
If you have these needs, but you have all of these great positive things going on in your community, how can both of these be true? Because so we then, when we do this assessment process,
it kind of looks when you kind of lay that out, you show them.
It's a lot of
their assets and what they have, all these assets and resources, and then these needs. How do you say, why is this happening?
Right.
What do they do?
It depends on the community, of course. I'm painting with a kind of a broad brush here, but one of the things they do is they kind of are thrown back in their chair and they say, well, that's a good question. What do we need to tell this organization so that they'll come and work with us? Right. Huh. So it's, and another thing is that they'll say where it really is great is where they come and go, we're not sitting around doing nothing. We just don't have the capacity to do a lot quickly, but we've already done these things to go solve these problems. And we're on
okay.
our way. We're walking on our way. Those are the communities that we want to come alongside. But what we do is when we have this assessment process,
but there are some communities that you go to and you lay that out and they go, well, the reason, yeah, we do have all this. Okay, these assets, as you call them, resources. But we do have these needs, and we're just overwhelmed by the needs. We really can't do nothing. We need somebody to come in and help us.
Yeah. And so then
that's one of those that you go, we're not going to help you.
No, we're going to say, so that's what's called an empowerment analysis. That's kind of the last step in our assessment process. When you think about empowerment, that's an overused, poorly defined word as it relates to helping the poor. Everybody wants to empower the poor, but what does that mean?
Tell you, it's a marketing word, and you marketing guys love words like that.
Yeah, I don't want to be characterized as a marketing guy anymore. But,
you can't run from your resume, Kurt.
That's true. Nor should I. But so you can't empower somebody against their will. People need to claim, need to accept, need to embrace their empowerment. You can put them in an empowering environment, but they need to claim it. And so what we go through is on our assessment process, it takes hours, if not days, to go through. At the end of it, it ultimately comes down to they have things they want to go solve. And so we ask the leaders, look, we don't want you to answer this as a group. We want you to answer this question individually. And that is, if you could change one thing in your community today, what's the one thing that you would want to change? What is one thing that you don't want your children or your grandchildren to struggle with that you currently struggle with? But you only can choose one. Wow. We ask them to keep that quiet. And then when everyone's completed that, we have them share it, and they may have 5 or 6 different one things they want to go do. But then it's incumbent on them. We say, okay, when you guys, as the leaders of your community, you only can choose one. So you guys need to kind of talk to each other for a bit and just choose one. And they choose one. And let's say it's water. And we'll say, okay, what's the solution to your water problem? And they may say, well, we have this river that runs through our community, but it's seasonal, so it dries up. And when that dries up, there is no water. So we need to go drill a borehole with a pump and a tank to pull water out from underground and have water for our community. And so let's just say that that's their solution. That's their view of their problem, their solution to their problem. We say, okay. And we draw 3 concentric circles on a big piece of paper. And in the center of this circle is the amount of the solution, the percentage of this solution that the community can do on its own. How much of this water problem can you solve on your own? The middle circle is how much of that problem do you need help from outsiders? And the outer band of these 3 concentric circles is the percentage of the solution that's beyond anyone's control. If it doesn't rain, there's no water, the aquifers dry up, whatever it might be. And then we give them 10 seeds, 10 coffee beans, 10 stones, whatever. It's called the 10 seeds. And I didn't come up with that, by the way. A guy named Ravi Jarakayan did. He used it for years. But then we say, hey, these 10 seeds represent 100% of this water solution. We need you to distribute these 10 seeds across these 3 bands to tell us what percentage of this problem can the community solve on its own, how much help do you need from outsiders, and how much do you see as outside of anyone's control? And then the leaders kind of have a problem, Charlie. Because if they put too many seeds in the center circle, we may not help them because they can do too much on their own.
Right.
If they put too many seeds in the middle band, they're going to think that, this organization might think that we're helpless and they're not going to help us. And if we put too many on the outer band, they're going to think we're hopeless and they're not going to help us. So they are moving these seeds. It's a fascinating thing. It takes them 20, 30 minutes to work through this until they are trying to find the right way, the right answer. And I get it. They need water. It's heartbreaking. They need water. They're walking hours every day for dirty water. They're getting sick. It's a heartbreaking thing. So finally they land on an answer. And so for the purposes of this kind of conversation, I'll say, they put 30%, say, in the center circle. They put 60% in the middle and 10% in the 1 seed in the outer band. And then they kind of step back and they say, well, okay, we think this is the right answer. But the next question isn't when do we start? The next question is if you can do 30% of this solution on your own, what are you waiting for? And are you looking for someone to come in with 60% from outside before you go do your 30%? And there's this old story that's been tried and true, for years. But if I'm in a Kenyan community and I said, if two people in your community are trying to make their way to Nairobi and they know that I'm going to Nairobi, and one of them is walking on the road to Nairobi and another one is sitting in their home waiting for me to pick them up, who am I going to give a ride to? Well, you're going to give a ride to the guy walking. Exactly. So what are you doing to go solve this 30% on your own? And then sometimes they say, oh, this is what we're doing. We're doing this. We did a hydrogeological survey. We're raising money. We're doing things. Great. That's what we want to hear. But then we ask them, well, who are these outsiders that you...
Well, wait a second. What else do you hear about that? Give me another answer that you hear.
Another answer is we don't, I mean, this is a bad answer, but we don't have the resources to do the 30%. We need somebody to come in first with the 60 before.
There you go. Okay. Yeah.
They'll say we can do soft contribution, unskilled labor, nothing material, but we need people to give us the materials to go solve this problem. If it's a clinic or a school building or whatever. So there's different answers, but it's not about solving the problem yet. It's about their perspectives on solving the problem. Because who are the outsiders? Are we the outsider that you're waiting for us to come in and do this 60% before you do your 30? There are a bunch of other organizations in Kenya that are solving the water problem. What's your government's role in helping you solve this problem? And at the end of the day, as leaders in your community, what are you doing to find these outsiders that can come in and help you solve the resource problem that you currently have? And they ultimately realize that all the seeds are in the center. It's their responsibility. They can't be looking to outsiders to solve their problems.
Wow.
And when they have that realization, we're happy to come along and help them go further faster. But when they come to us with a list of projects that they want us to go do, we just say thank you, but that's just not going to solve.
How long does it take for them to realize, oh my God, all the seeds are in the center? There is 10% that's outside of our control. Okay. But the 90%, all those seeds, those 9 seeds are in the center.
Yeah.
How long does it take for them to?
Some communities never get that. Some leaders,
right, with your communities you won't work with.
Right. But communities, they get it at that point. And when
right then, in that discussion, they get it.
So here's a real life example that I have in the book. It would happen in Honduras. We were invited into Honduras by another organization to try to help them understand how we did what we did so they could go and implement it on their own. And we were in this community at the top of a mountain, and it was a 20 to 30 minute drive up these switchback mountains, longer than it actually, but switchback roads, really bad roads, to the top of this mountain where they're growing coffee or they're doing dairy, they're farmers, they're doing a lot of things up there.
They got stuff to sell.
Huh?
They got stuff to sell.
They do, and they can't get to market. And so when we went through this whole process with them, it came down to the empowerment analysis of how much they can do on their own and so forth. The problem that they identified were their roads. Our number one priority is to fix our roads. And, we don't do roads, right? We don't have heavy equipment, whatever. But
no, you're a school specialist.
Well, the point is that, how much of this can you do on your own? How much you need help from outsiders? And they came back with, I think, 40% in the center, 60% in the middle, and nothing was beyond their control. And we gave them the question of, what are you waiting for? And who are these outsiders that you're looking for? Are you looking to us to do that? There are plenty of outsiders that can go help you to do that. And I revisited that community 2 months later, and they had their roads fixed.
Wow.
And when I asked them, guys, this road's amazing. How did this happen? They said, it happened because you changed how we thought. We never thought that we were in control of finding outsiders to come in and help us with this road. And we realized that the outsider that needed to help us was the government, the mayor. So we went down the mountain, 200 of us, and we descended on the mayor's office and we said, we want our road fixed. If you give us 60% heavy equipment, some fuel, we'll hire the drivers, we'll provide the skilled labor, and we'll fix the road on our own if you can give us a bit of help. And in 2 months, they had the road fixed. Just because they started thinking differently.
So how were they thinking before?
We're waiting for the government. Our government is worthless. Our government does nothing for us. Our government, we can't do this. And we don't have heavy equipment. We need somebody to come in and do this for us.
So they were having the conversation with the government in their head, and the government was saying no. So that was the end of it. They didn't do anything. Right?
They're helpless, right? They were just didn't do it. But it makes it sound, when I say it this way, it sounds like it's just common sense and it's so easy. It takes time, and you got to build trust with the community so they listen, and you got to challenge them a bit. But they got to understand that they can, that it's not hopeless. And that there are ways of you as leaders to be effective leaders for your community, not being self-interested in your own well-being, but really having a vision for your community, getting together as a group and figuring out, hey, how are we going to go solve this problem on our own? Because this
you make it sound. So let me see what I'm hearing.
And it's not before us.
You make it sound like 410 Bridge is a high-level management consulting organization. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not that smart.
Does 410 Bridge, who is in the second circle that you're talking about there, okay? In other words, resources who could help. How does, beyond this methodology and beyond the most important thing, which is changing the way that they think, okay, that development is really something they do, not everybody else does.
Right.
Is there anything that you guys do besides what you just described? I mean,
yeah.
Can you literally ever help? Are you one of those resources come beside them and work with them in their development?
Absolutely. When we partner with a community, we're walking with that leadership council for 8 to 13 years is the longest, a long time.
So you're putting money into it, or
money into it when they come again, that empowerment analysis that I explained. It just doesn't happen tactically, but basically it's the methodology for every project that we would do. Look, we have this dilapidated school building. And if I had gone to Budalali with that first school building in Uganda and had this methodology, I would have asked the community, how much of this school building could you do on your own? I never asked that. I was coming in to save the day. I was coming in to build it on my own, right? So in everything, we ask them, what are you going to do to contribute to this problem or this solution? And over time, they should be contributing more and more to their solutions than we are, to the point where ultimately they're doing more to solve their own problems than we are. We're just helping them go further faster. But at the end of the day, when we undermine their definition of development, which needs to be what they do, not what outsiders do. If we undermine that by coming in and doing for them, not with them, we'll erode the development model and will ultimately fail. So we're saying no way more than we say yes. We want to be encouraging to them, and we want to challenge them to mobilize their community to come out and solve their own problems. And it's not just
you told me about a success.
They need to what?
You told me about a success, which was these people at the top of the mountain. Where was that, in Guatemala?
Honduras.
Okay. And have you ever had what was a success or appeared to be on the road to success, okay, yet they didn't succeed?
Oh, yeah. More than I would like.
Because in order to be on the road to success, I would think that you've changed my thinking, okay? And you've come alongside me and all that. How does something like that not succeed?
Few reasons. This falls in the category of it's good to graduate a community and it's bad to exit a community. So we call these exits. And an exit happens when leaders become corrupt, or there's a change in leadership, and they're more interested in their personal benefit than the benefit to the community. That's one way. But really the biggest way that it fails and we have to exit is because of the West.
Because of whom?
Because of the West, because of us. So our greatest risk to our self-development model is the West. American churches, other organizations coming in and working in our community where they undermine the self-development effort. They come in and do for people as opposed to with people.
So they come in with the original model that you say doesn't work.
And it undermines the community's desire to go solve their own problem because this other organization's now solving it for us. And so that's, or, we've had some cases where a church partner.
How does a church find one of your communities, or how does the West find one of your communities or another NGO and then start applying their model? How do they find it if you're so tightly embedded and entwined in that solution? You follow me? And have those relationships. You speak very much. You have a whole chapter on relationships in your book. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have those relationships, mm-hmm. and then you're saying someone can come in from the West and start eating away at, again, how I think.
Yeah. So there's no silver bullet here, but it's a bunch of different ways that happens. One is we work in rural communities. And if we see other organizations already working in this community that we've been invited into, we're going to go vet those organizations to see if we can be successful in this community with them already there. If they're already in an unhealthy development model, we're swimming upstream. And there's
that's sort of evaluating the competition in effect. I'm using secular terms here, or I shouldn't say that. I'm using business terms, right? But if the competition, if the way that things are being done in that area are by the old model,
right? And there's some really,
then you're swimming upstream trying to put in a new way of thinking.
And there's some really large organizations that are working in communities that we haven't been able to be successful in because they talk a good game. They've all read the books, but they're not actually executing with discipline on not doing for people, or they are doing for people, not with people. So that's one way. The other way is that organizations just show up. I don't know how they find out about these communities. Somebody knows somebody in a church or something. I don't know. And all of a sudden they show up and they start, they want to have leaders come together like we do, but they start paying the leaders to gather. So we'll pay, leaders to come to a meeting. Well, as soon as that happens, 410 Bridge isn't paying anybody anything to come to a meeting. You're the leaders of your community. You should be leading your community. But when another organization comes in and always starts, and oftentimes unwittingly, but still they're not thinking very deeply about it, in my view. When they start doing things that are unhealthy, it very quickly undermines what we're trying to do. And then the last one is that we're sending, we partner with organizations, corporations, but mostly churches, and we're sending people on short-term trips to engage with people and maybe doing some training, or, there's just a short-term mission trip experience that is a very positive thing if done right. But what happens is a church potentially, and we've had this happen in the past, has had a longer relationship with a community, or had a relationship with a community, sending their people for a number of years, and they start thinking they have a better idea of what's going on than we do. And they come in and have hired one of the leaders as their international missionary to represent their church in this community. And then there's jealousy that's created, and there's this division that's created, and it very quickly becomes unraveled. So there's an assortment of reasons why it happens, but it happens, and it's oftentimes because of the West, not necessarily because of what's happening in the community.
But there is also the deal with some of these leaders, as these communities begin to develop and do well, they start to prosper. They become corrupt?
They can. If there's a change in leadership, a leader passes away and other leaders come in, it's just a long multi-year.
Yeah, right. I get it.
Leadership changes. And
we see the corruption in the United States government, right? I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. How do you do, give me an on-the-ground example is knowing what you know now. When you went to Uganda that first time and you're laying those bricks, watching those guys all sitting around and the community guys all sitting around, not helping at all. What would you do if you found yourself in that situation again?
I'd leave.
Just like that.
I'd leave.
You wouldn't say anything to them. You would just leave.
Well, first place, I wouldn't just show up in a community anymore. Hey, I'm here to build a building. right?
Right. I know that's true.
Well, being invited is a big first step, right? So there's not just one thing. So there's this process, this methodology, you call it, that we go through. But if we have a team of people from a church partner, call it, on the ground, and this has happened, where they're coming in the community to go help the community with a project. Our teams, 410 Bridge teams, are engaging in what's already going on in the community. We're not creating things for them necessarily to go do. So there's a project underway, let's say, and the team shows up to go start building a school building, and nobody from the community is there to build the school building with this team. We'll put them on the bus and we'll go find them something else to go do.
That's great.
Because we can't do 4 people.
How have you done? How effective have you been with those leaders that you have chosen to represent you in those different countries? That must have been a whole different thing, a new learning there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best
because you're paying those people to do that work.
Oh, you're talking about our staff?
I'm talking about, yeah. So I'm the representative for 410 Bridge in Guatemala or in Honduras or Rwanda or wherever it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way I say that is, we hire Kenyans to help Kenyans, and their Kenyan worldview of the way an NGO works isn't the 410 Bridge way that we work. So we have to retrain and kind of orient them on what we will do, what we won't do. And so there's a lot of training and orientation and education that needs to happen. And said, look, but again, I think
and a lot of continuing communication and involvement.
Constant. It's constant. It's constant.
Because I'm in the middle of that. In other words, if I'm hanging around in that culture, eventually I'll be converted to the culture.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting is that, again, I'm painting with a broad brush here, but they don't like the old model either, because they don't like the West.
So you're looking for people who are basically sold out,
right? And so
I know this is right. I'm in.
At the end of the book, I did a little thing which I thought was, I don't know, just an idea, but I said to all of our in-country staff, I didn't ask our U.S. staff any of this, just all our in-country staff. I said, look, if you were able to come over here and sit in a room full of high-capacity donors, people who had the capacity to help, they had the desire to help, and they really wanted to help. I mean, they really wanted to help. That's the title of the book, If You Really Want to Help. And you could say anything to them that you wanted. How would you finish these 2 sentences? If you really want to help, start doing this. And if you really want to help, stop doing this. And that's how I ended the book. I've listed them by name, and I've actually put in what they sent me.
Oh, how cool.
They say things like, if you really want to help, leave. If you really want to help, quit coming in and thinking that you have the answers to our problems. Mm. It's a highly convicting, I think, a beautiful, transparent, very honest, vulnerable answer to the question to the West that says, we are not, the poor are not a set of problems to be solved by you. We are the solution to our poverty problem. Let us lead, you follow. Let us solve our own problems. Help us with the capacity and the teaching and maybe the resources to go do that. But don't come in here and tell us what you need, what you think we need, because you're not right. And don't convey your Western, broken, really jacked up values on us. But how many organizations do that, Charlie? We have the money and the idea, and we think it kind of should be our way. And I think that's why I get in trouble a lot with my directness and all that. But I feel like 410 Bridge, this methodology isn't new. There's lots of writings on this, but we are a disruption to this space.
And, no, you are. It's just tremendous.
And we have to separate, the West has to separate what we give and how we give it from our need to feel good about ourselves. We have.
And how many people and how many communities have you started with? I mean, not started like from the beginning, but how many have you at least had to start with, and how many communities are you are you still with, and how many have graduated? You follow me?
Yeah. So we've graduated 13. We're going to graduate our 13th. I think that's right. 13th this year. We're currently working in probably, I would say, call it 20 communities.
Okay.
Now we're in Haiti. And
so 13 graduated, 20 are active, and then you had some bigger number.
We've probably, I would say we've had 6 to 8 that we've had to exit.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And then there's Haiti, which we had 20.
What happened there?
Well, it's just a mess, man. It's a failed state, and we're really unable to do our development work right now there because of the civil unrest and kidnappings and gangs, and it's not conducive to development. Really, what it is a relief environment.
So basically, you're saying it's an unstable society.
I call it a failed state. Yeah, it's
a failed state.
Send people. Our staff can't travel. So we're not able to work there. We were up.
Well, this doesn't go back to the two things. In other words, it's not that the leaders aren't corrupt. You said that you had failures because the leaders become corrupt, or the West comes in. This is just an unstable environment. You can't work in that.
Correct. That's correct.
I got it. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So you've been doing this 16 years?
Almost 17. Yeah, it's great.
Almost 17 years. Okay. So you had people come alongside with when they look at the communities, the impact that you've had and everything, the people that you've graduated. They said, man, Kurt, you need to write a book. Okay. So how long, I'm sure that they were asking you to write a book long ago.
Yeah.
For many, many years, right?
Yeah, that's true. So
why did you at this point say, I bet I should write that book?
Yeah.
Tell me how that happened.
I started writing it about 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know how long it's been. And had some chapter summaries.
What got you finally started?
I'm sorry?
The hard part is getting started. Like you said, God told me I should just do the next right thing. Right. When did you finally get to that first right thing on the book?
Again, 5 or 6 years ago, circulated kind of proposals, chapter summaries to publishers. And basically they were saying it was too close to When Helping Hurts, which is a pretty big book in our space of how to help the poor.
Yeah, I think you told me once that was the Bible for the space.
The Bible. Now, I hope if you really want help, it becomes the next version of that Bible, because theirs is, we really love it. It's I'm a big fan of it, but it's fairly academic. And I feel like if you really want to help, is When Helping Hurts meets boots on the ground. That's kind of how I see it. How do we actually go and implement?
So did When Helping Hurts, did they have the same look? Or did they have the same philosophy that you had? Were they solving the same problem? Do I identify it the way you do?
I think they did, but not in the same words. I mean, they see poverty as an issue of broken relationships between, us and God, us and our environment, us and our neighbors. And so they have just different ways of saying it. And they did it really well. I mean, I came out in 2009. We've been doing it for a few years. We loved it. And it's a biblical foundation to it, which we really love too. So I'm a big fan. I just feel like my book today, I started actually in earnest started.
So what did you tell these publishers when you kind of floated this idea with them, and they said, it just seems like this one. Why would I do yours?
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation. It was just like, no, thanks. So
what do you do then? You're telling me to write, everybody's telling me to write a book. I wrote a few chapters. I floated it. There's no interest.
I did the next right thing, which was just put it up on the shelf. And when God wanted to open a door to go write the book, he'd open that door and I'd walk through.
Okay.
It. And that's what happened at the beginning of 2021, really. And so that's when I, in earnest, felt like we had now several more years under our belt, more graduated communities, more learning. And I felt like there was a different story that I wanted to tell from the first one that kind of coalesced in my head. And and I was able, my problem was getting from a blank piece of paper to something that I could expand on. So I worked with a woman named Bethany Bradshaw, who helped me take out of my head, put into book format. And she got me started on kind of what I wanted to say and how I wanted to organize my thoughts and the points we were trying to make and the stories. that needed to be told, and then I took it from there and wrote it. So,
but to the answer to that question, I did have a question. It says, there aren't a lot of books on developing these developing community, how to do this development. Okay. And you're saying, yeah, in fact, it was one when Helping Hurts is sort of the, is sort of the Bible of it all. But I see what you're saying is the reason for your book is that was a very fairly academic sort of view of things, which wasn't incorrect, but correct. But yours is really, this is how you apply this.
This is one of the ways to apply it. This is how we.
Yeah, and it's really worked for us. And I've got proof. I'm not academic anymore. I'm telling you what we did.
And I think
what worked and what didn't work, right? I mean, that's a different view.
The other significant difference is, or additional additive to it is that there's this worldview focus. So it's like when Helping Hurts, discipling nations, how do you actually go get people to start thinking about thinking differently so they can solve their own problems, they can continue their journey of development long after you leave? How do you redefine this war on poverty, what it means to win it, what it means for the people living in poverty, and how do we redefine how we fight the battle together? That's what my book is.
I love that. So you got Discipling Nations, the oldest book. Then you get to When Helping Hurts, which takes the discipling, which takes a view of, it doesn't embrace discipling nations. Okay. It has it's a standalone sort of philosophy, if you will. And then you come over with, if you really want to help.
You really want to help.
And you bring all of those together and make it work.
Try to, yeah.
Who's your audience for this?
I think it's.
Who should read this book?
I think it's the quick answer is there's a kind of an insider group of any global missions pastor, anybody running a nonprofit, working in poverty environments, who are willing to step back from what they do and say, am I thinking about this properly? Am I incorporating this worldview shift idea that is the only way, in my view, to sustain solutions for the poor over the long haul? Am I doing that? And so that group of people. I think also I want trip participants, people that are going and working with the poor, to read it before they go, so they have a better understanding of what they're facing, and that just because they have the money in their pocket that they think they can solve this problem, they really need to rethink how they define poverty, how they think about poverty, what those solutions are. Because I say so often that, the greatest risk to our development model are short-term teams going into our communities, because they get emotional, they see someone in need, they want to solve that problem, and they don't think about, you can help, but if you really want to help, here's a way to help. The how we do it is critically important. So just pause, don't get emotional, and let's figure out how to make the local church the hero. How do we do this in a proper way where you can still help, but you can do it in a healthy way? And then I think there's another audience that's a broader audience who I would love to just read my book and apply this idea of worldview, driving choices driving actions, because on our side of the bridge, we have a worldview problem too. And it's not just as it relates to the poor, but we are being told lies every day by the world.
You mean our side of the bridge being America?
Yeah.
Okay. That was something I was going to get into. This is interesting you bringing this up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're being told.
So you look at the poor communities, the uneducated communities, the indigent that we have here in America, the homelessness issues that we're dealing with. I mean, it's very broad.
It is.
Because I came back from Uganda and I was like, what can I do to help in Atlanta?
Yeah.
And I didn't even know where to start. And one of my sons was very engaged in one of those communities, and he finally broke his pick. He said, I don't know what to do. There's a guy in our church who every Sunday goes through this community, a very bad community here in Atlanta, and he rounds up 10, 12 kids, puts them on a bus, brings them to church. And I said, what are you doing? He says, well, I came out of a real bad community in LA, Hispanic community. I almost got killed. The guy that got killed was somebody who looked like me. They thought they were going after me. So I always felt like I needed to do something. So I don't know what to do. So I just pick them up and bring them to the church. And the reason is I want them to see what life might be.
Right.
To get a view. So, but so speak to this. So how might your book help on this side of the bridge in our communities? So who should read it?
Anybody running anybody running a nonprofit working with the disadvantaged, but even I say disadvantaged, the poor, the homeless. There's a lot of systemic issues that we have on this side of the bridge that complicate that.
Oh, baby.
Politically.
Now, you don't have the government over there in Uganda giving people money.
Exactly. All sorts of other issues. I think I hope that the book provides a platform for someone to sit back in their chair and think more critically about what they're doing. So in and of itself, this guy that's bringing these 10 or 12 kids out of that poor community and bringing them to church, in and of itself, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
But where's the local church?
Right.
With those kids? Why isn't he taking those kids to their church in their community who can come alongside them inside their community and not take them outside where the solution to their problem is this church outside the community? Again, it's really hard to be critical of that because it's not in and of itself a bad thing, but are we thinking critically about solutions that are really going to help? That may be really difficult.
I think you got to ask yourself the question, like if you are him, is to say, am I doing this because it really makes me feel good? Or am I doing this because it's really having an impact on their lives?
Well, and I would say it's probably having an impact on their lives, but is there a way to, is there a better way?
Is there a better way? Right.
Harder, maybe a little bit more.
I get it. Okay. That's good.
Again, I don't want to be critical because there's a lot of people doing really great things, but stop and think through, are you really helping? Or are you just doing the same things that you've been doing for decades without any outcome, without any proof that the outcomes are actually working? This is why I talk about our outcomes are what's important. Not how many programs we run,
that makes sense.
Activities we undertake. Are we achieving the measurable outcomes that we want? I wish organizations.
One of the things that I would recommend, and you brought up this, who should read the book? Mm-hmm. You brought up one group, and you said that so many churches, and particularly large churches, are sending people, sending kids out, right? In a lot of cases, on these mission trips. Mm-hmm. I just got somebody who's got a son who's going on the mission trip, and he said, my son needs to raise whatever the number was, $2,200 or whatever to go on this trip. Mm-hmm. The total trip is going to cost $54,000 or something, and I look at that and I go, wow, that's a lot of money. But, the guy said, who sent it to me, a friend, he said, when I went on a mission trip, it really changed my perspective on the world and on life. So it had that impact on him, and he's really excited that his son is going. I would recommend that your book be given to each one of those kids as they're getting back on the plane to come back to America. Not before. After. Maybe. In other words, I lived it. I'm sitting in it. Look, you get this free book. Now you're saying, and it asks you, do you really want to help? Because now I have something to compare it against.
Yeah. And
I think that it would have amazing impact. And develop some really great world leaders.
Yeah, I'm writing a small group curriculum attached to the book at this currently, where it's on poverty, and it's kind of this group experiential small group curriculum. So that'll be coming out in the next few months. Study plans, YouVersion reading plans, discussion plans, all to get the dialogue for people who are going to stop and again and just reflect on. Yeah. But
if you can get these people,
we are called, Charlie, to help the poor, but we're not called to support the poor. We're here to help the poor, and as much time, in my view, it's much of that has to do with how that impacts us as it does the poor. And so that's why when we send teams, and we send lots of teams from lots of churches, partners, to going, into our communities, it's a very relational thing. It's not about what we're going off to do. It's about who we're doing it with. And can we create this experience, cross-cultural experience, where both sides of the bridge see God at work in new and exciting ways? We develop our worldview. We love on each other. We do things, but it's not about what we do. It's about who we do it with. Yep. Instead of being a doer, of going over there and wanting to be a doer, we want people to go over there and be. And, that's an amazing discipleship opportunity. A lot of people say to me all the time, kind of where you were going, he says, well, we're going to spend $55,000 on this trip. Wouldn't it be better if we just sent the money over there? And I'm like, no, it wouldn't be. Now, in some cases, it would be, because some organizations are doing it so poorly and perpetuating the problem and actually disempowering people that they're going to serve, that it probably would be better not to send their people. But if you do it right, the kingdom is a much better place because of it. But you got to do it right, and again, it's more difficult. It's requires more training. It requires more discussion and more preparation for the community. And so I'm a big fan, because if I didn't go for that first trip to Butalali, 410 Bridge wouldn't have happened. And we've impacted hundreds of thousands of people over the last 17 years. That's been really helpful. But if I hadn't gone and seen and experienced and made all those mistakes,
Yeah, but I love it that God got a hold of your heart and convicted you that you need to solve this problem. I mean, it's a business. An entrepreneur's view is they see problems, and we see problems. There's problems everywhere in our lives. They surround us, but every once in a while, an entrepreneur goes, that's important. I know how to solve that. And that's how it gets started.
I'll get started.
One step at a time. So you're a heck of an entrepreneur. So what's the next decade look for 410? What's the next decade look like for 410 Bridge?
Well, that's a good question. I would say
this will bring you to your 25th anniversary.
Yeah. Wow. It's not the years, it's the miles. But yeah, I would say that we'll expand into we're already looking at expanding into some more countries, but we've been invited into new countries. So I'm excited about that. I think we'll continue to refine and grow our current methodology to get better at it. But at the end of the day, I think this isn't as much about us going and helping, 1 or 10 or 12 more communities. To me, it really is about being a disruption to this poverty space and changing the paradigm of how the West engages the poor, so that other organizations stop doing what's not helpful, start doing what really helps, and then we can have a bigger, broader kingdom impact. Because we learned very early on that we can't be successful over there without support from the West. We need money and resources to do what we do. But we also can't be successful in what we do until we change the paradigm of how the West engages the poor. Because how we define it, the solutions that we put in place, if we continue to define poverty as a financial problem, our solutions are going to be all financial. And that is not going to solve, in my view, the poverty problem. So I spend a lot of my time kind of doing this. That's why I wrote. I think
this is it's a good view. I give you a view that I give sometimes to entrepreneurs. And these are entrepreneurs that might build a $200 million company. Okay. And they think like, wow, we're a really big company. And from a corporate viewpoint, they're basically a successful pilot. Okay. That's how corporate looks at it. I am a, about $200 billion company or something. And you tell me I got this $200 million organization, and they go like, yeah, it's nice. And those are the companies they buy because they see now that product and that idea solving that problem works. Now we can incorporate it into our bigger organization. And that's what you're trying to do. You have a successful pilot on how to do development in how to serve the poor in developing countries. Will they adopt it, right?
It's amazing that you just said that, because I met with a mutual friend this morning.
Okay.
That's the exact words that he used, was the word pilot. You have.
Oh, it was. Oh my gosh. Okay.
You've got these pilots, and he's helping me work through, again, this is about a movement, and it's about really, really changing how the West approaches the poor with proof of these pilots that they work. Now go and scale it. I'm not going to scale 410 to, $200 million ministry. That's not what I feel like I'm called to do. But I do feel like we can do a much better job globally of engaging the poor if we just, on this side, rethink how we do it, define it better, rethink our methodology, and again, separate what we give and how we give it from our need to feel good about ourselves.
Well, I got 2 more questions and we'll end this, and I'll let you go. One is, so how I want to make sure that people understand or listen to this, how they might, what your need is financially at 410 Bridge and how they might help.
Yeah, I mean, we got needs, financial needs for sure. Everything that we have to do our work is sacrificially given by people who are generous. And so,
because you're not an organization that generates revenue.
We do not. We have not significant, right? We try to do some sustainability things.
Like, what's your budget?
We're at about $5.5 million.
So you need to raise $5.5 million virtually. Mm-hmm. Well, that's how much you need to get in.
7.5, but okay.
7.5. Okay, we're growing. Okay,
we want to go do more. There's so many more things we can go do, but so we would love people to pray for our ministry is just a great place to start. I mean, we covet people's prayers for the people that we serve, for our staff, especially our staff on the ground. They're on the front lines, and so prayer would be great. To help us financially, we'd be really grateful for that. They can go to 410bridge.org and help us financially. Sponsoring a child is a great way to stay engaged with our ministry, because we've redefined that child sponsorship program, and where you may have a one-to-one relationship with a child that you're walking with on their journey of development as they're kind of going through school. But the resources go to lift the holistic development of that child and all of the children in that community. It's not an unhealthy one-to-one help to that child. So that's another thing they can go do. And I think there's nothing better that somebody can do than to walk alongside the life of a child as they're growing up. And tell their friends about the book, read the book, see how you can engage. If your church is partnering with 410, I think you need to go see it. You need to go serve people who can never serve you back. That's another way to go do that or to help.
I love that. So as I had, my last question is what about you? What does your next decade look like? But sounds a bit like one of the answers that you gave me was, I need to be the evangelist for this pilot that we've created, the successful pilot.
And that's what I see. I think we do a really good job. I think we do a really good job on multiple fronts. We're not certainly far from perfect, but I think one of the things that we do well is our methodology for the poor. But the other one is on this side of the bridge, partnering with the North American Church. And I'm spending more and more of my time these days coaching, teaching, rebuking, encouraging the global missions within the North American Church to get better at mission. And so I think that's probably over the next 10 years, I'll probably do less and less of the 410 Bridge operator and more and more of being the ambassador for, if you really want to help. I mean, because if you really want to help, we got to change some things. And
I think that is where you are. I do think that that you need to be that ambassador, because you're onto something that has certainly proven to be successful. And I wish you the best with the book. I love the advice that you finally give us, which is serve people who can't serve themselves.
No, can't serve you back.
Can't serve you back, rather. Right. They can serve themselves, because your philosophy or your principle is development starts with you. Exactly. Not with somebody on the outside. Boy, I learned so much. I learned a lot reading your book, but this has been a real joy just spending time with you. And I know,
my pleasure, Charlie. I appreciate you. Having me on.
I'll tell you, I know the entrepreneurs that listen to this, and I'll end with this, Kurt, if you just hang on for a second before we cut off. But to the entrepreneurs who listen to this, this is, there's so many lessons that can be learned for what Kurt has accomplished here. You're onto something as an entrepreneur when a problem, you see it and you just can't let go of it, and you just have to chase it. And people will start coming around you. It will start working. It will start growing. And all you have to do is what he said God wants him to do, which is the next right thing. So thanks for joining us. And I hope to see you in a future interview.
Thanks, Charlie.